All right. Get rid of that. Perfect. Sorry for a little bit of a delay. Just trying to get everything set up and working correctly. Again, at a new location. So, but hopefully it should look pretty good. So, without further ado, let's get started. So, hello everyone. Once again, we have another webinar. Going to be talking about a couple of things. Another webinar on our series, I guess, of talking about ERPs, talking about WMSs, and all these different topics in regards to how to implement properly, etc. So a lot of different things that we keep on talking about, and this is going to be another episode. So, yeah. Today's topic is one that I get asked about almost every single week, and it is this: how do you fix inventory chaos without replacing your ERP? I want to start with a bit of a promise. So, if your stock records do not match your shelves, if your team is spending its day hunting for boxes that the system swears are there, the answer is almost never rip out the ERP and start again. In my experience, and I've been doing this for over 11 years now, the ERP is very rarely the villain of this story. The problem lives somewhere much more specific. And once you can see exactly where it lives, it becomes fixable in weeks rather than years. So that is what the next 50 minutes or so are for. Quick housekeeping. Please drop your questions in the chat as we go. I'll keep an eye on them, and we'll try to do my best to answer them. Might be at the end, but still. And stay to the finish. As always, you'll get a free PDF guide from us. So let's go to the next slide. Most of you are probably familiar with me, but let me quickly reintroduce myself here. Spent, again, over 11 years now in warehouse and inventory management automation, and most of that time has been on the floor rather than behind a desk. So I've worked on end-to-end projects across wholesale distributions, dealerships, automotive parts, manufacturing, e-commerce, retail, you name it. Worked on the floor, actually doing, picking operations at one of the wholesale warehouses as well. So have quite an extensive experience in this. Again, very different industries, wildly different products, and honestly, the same problems in almost every single one of these. That is the part that always surprises people. I'd say like 5 problems. What I care about is straightforward, helping businesses get their operations under control and unlock a level of efficiency that they can actually sustain. Not a spike after a big cleanup, sustained. So everything I share today comes from real implementations, including the mistakes, especially the mistakes, actually, because those are usually the most useful part. Here's how I would like to spend our time together, so you know exactly what is coming and can decide where you want to lean in. Here's our agenda. We start with why inventory chaos persists, even in companies that have already invested heavily in software. Then we put real numbers on what inventory problems actually cost, including the costs that never show up in a report. From there, we get to the good part, where the transformation opportunity lies and how the automation journey works in practice, step by step. Then how to implement with less risk. This is the section your CFO would care about the most, and how to prove business value once you have done it. We finish with a real customer case from the UAE, and then that free guide, as I mentioned. One thing to flag, the first half is deliberately diagnostic. No product, no pitch, because if we skip the diagnosis, everything after it is just guessing with a bigger budget. So let's begin with the diagnosis. And I want to start by describing a warehouse. Again, tell me in the chat if any of this sounds like yours. Here's the pattern. 5 symptoms, and I see them in almost exactly this order. 1, stock exists, but nobody can find it. It was received, it was paid for, it is somewhere in the building. Good luck. Number 2, the ERP says available, and the warehouse says missing. 2 systems of truth, one of which happens to be made of concrete and steel. 3, teams depend on memory and spreadsheets. There's always one person, let's call him John, who knows where everything is. John is brilliant. John is also a single point of failure who occasionally goes on holiday, right? You get the point. Number 4, every discrepancy becomes an exception. So somebody has to stop, investigate, escalate, decide. That is not a warehouse process anymore. That is an investigation department. And number 5, accuracy only improves after a recount. You do a full count, everything is beautiful for about 2 weeks, and then the drift starts to happen again. Now, notice something. Not one of those 5 is a lazy employee. Not one is a bad ERP. This is a pattern, and patterns have causes. So, if it is not the people and it is not the ERP, then what is it? To answer that, we need to be very precise about what an ERP is actually built to do and what it was never built to do. So let's dig into that. This slide, for me, is the most important one in the entire presentation. If you remember one thing today, I would strongly advise to remember the following distinction. On the left, your ERP, the system of record, orders and documents, inventory balances, financial transactions, master data, and ERPs are generally excellent at this. They give you an auditable, consistent, financially correct picture of the business. On the right, your warehouse, the system of action, let's call it that. Receive, move, replenish, pick, ship, count, 6 verbs, physical things moving through space, handled by human beings under time pressure. Here's the thing, your ERP records records those 6 verbs. If it does not execute them, it has no idea whether the pallet went to aisle 4 or aisle 14. It knows only what somebody eventually typed into it. And typically they typed it later from a note, from memory, at the end of a shift, whatever. So the gap is not a software defect, it is a design boundary. And that gap between the action happening and the record being made is exactly where inventory truth goes to that. Now, when the leadership sees that gap, there's one instinct that shows up almost every time, and it is an expensive one. So let's look at it honestly on the following slide. And here it is. So the temptation, of course, looks like this. Replace the entire platform, redesign everything at once, accept the cost and the disruption, because this time we're going to do it properly. And then, this is the painful part, delay every immediate operational improvement for 12, 18, 24 months while the project runs. And I want to be fair here. Sometimes an ERP generally does need replacing. If yours is unsupported or it cannot handle your transactions volume, it's outdated, among many other reasons, then that is a real conversation in that case, for sure. But I have watched companies complete a full ERP migration and then discover with real horror that the stock still cannot be found, because the new ERP is also a system of record. You replace the ledger. You do not change how the ledger gets filled in. So here is the better question, and it is deliberately much smaller and much more useful. Where specifically does inventory truth break? Answer that, and the fix is usually far cheaper, far faster, and far less disruptive than anybody in the room has expected. So before we go hunting for that breakpoint, though we should be clear about what it is costing you to leave it alone, because the number is much bigger than most teams think. Let's take a look at the next slide here. So let's talk cost. And I've split this across 2 slides for a reason. These are the visible costs, the ones that make it into a report somebody actually reads. Inventory adjustments, the corrections you post when the count and the system disagree. Write-offs, stock that got expired, got damaged, or simply became unfindable for long enough that you just gave up. And customer complaints, the short shipment, the wrong item, the promised date you missed. Now, these are painful, but here's what is interesting about them. Most organizations have quietly normalized these numbers. There is a monthly adjustment figure that everyone considers about normal. There's an acceptable complaint rate. They have been budgeted for. The visible costs are not the problem. The visible costs are the receipt. And the receipt only tells you what was charged. So let's go under the waterline and look at what you are actually paying. Here's the part below that waterline that I mentioned. 5 hidden costs. And in my experience, these routinely dwarf everything on the previous slide. So let's start with the first one. Search time. Minutes per line, every day, across every single picker. It never appears as a line item, and it is often the single largest labor cost in the building. Rework and expedites. The repick, the emergency purchase because a part wasn't there, the courier at 3 times the normal rate. That was number 2. Now, number 3, lost warehouse capacity, where you do not know precisely what is where. You cannot store densely. You hold empty space as insurance against your own uncertainty. And in this region, square meters are not cheap. Number 4, excess safety stock. This is my favorite because it is so rational and so expensive. When you do not trust your numbers, you buy a buffer. And based on my experience, that is a normal thing nowadays. And it's been for quite some time. That buffer is just a working capital sitting still. And lastly, management firefighting. Your best, most expensive people spending their day reconciling instead of improving. Now, here's why these persist. Every visible cost has an owner. Almost none of these hidden ones do. Nobody's job title is reduce surge time. So they compound quietly year after year. Now, all of those costs sound like separate problems, but they usually are not. They're all downstream of one very small event, and I want to trace it down for you. Let's follow the chain. We have 6 steps here. 1, an inventory move is not recorded. Somebody shifts a pallet to make room, entirely sensible, entirely undocumented. 4 seconds of work, not done. 2, the ERP now shows false availability, not wrong quantity, wrong place. And in a warehouse, those are the same thing. Then the picker cannot find the item. They go to the location the system gave them, and boom, it's an empty shelf. And that brings us to number 4. An exception process begins. Ask the supervisor, check the other aisle, call procurement, 10 minutes minimum, and now 2 people are involved instead of 1. Then the customer order is eventually delayed. Either it ships short or it ships late. And number 6, the last one, cost and service levels both suffer. And notice you have now paid twice, once in labor, once in customer trust. All of it from step 1, and here is the strategic point. You cannot fix this chain at step 5. By step 5, it is damage control. The only place to fix it is at step 1, at the moment the physical event actually happens. So If step one is where we have to intervene, the next question is a practical one. How do you find your own step ones? And that is a diagnostic exercise you can run this week without buying anything or consulting anyone. You can just take some notes from today's session and do that diagnosis. So, and you want to do that before technology, always. Here are the 5 things to look for in every process you have. Manual data entry. Anywhere a human types what a machine could have read. Every keystroke is a chance to be wrong. Missing validation. Can somebody complete a task incorrectly without the system objecting? If yes, they eventually will. Not out of carelessness, but because it was possible. Then I have delayed ERP posting. How long between the physical event and the record? If the answer is end of the shift, you have a blind window, and everybody making decisions during that window is guessing. Poor transaction visibility. Can you tell me right now which transactions completed and which quietly failed? And then uncontrolled exceptions. Exceptions that get solved by whoever happens to be nearby with no record and no owner. Take those 5, hold them up against each of your processes, and the breakpoints light up. It is generally that mechanical. And you do not have to apply those 5 tests to your whole operation at once. There are 6 processes where the breakpoints almost always cluster. And let's take a look at the next slide. Here's where to point the flashlight. 6 processes. Receiving. Because every error you accept here, you inherit for the life of that stock. Got receiving wrong, and everything downstream is compensating. Put away. The single biggest source of it exists, but we cannot find it. Then we have internal movements. Almost always the least controlled process in the building because it feels informal. It is not. Then we have replenishment, where the pick face silently runs dry and nobody knows until a picker is standing in front of it. And then, of course, picking and shipping, the most visible and usually the most measured, which means it is often the only one being measured. And lastly, cycle counting, which, if done well, stops being a corrective activity and becomes an early warning system. So, my honest advice, start with receiving and put away. Fix the front door, and a surprising amount of the downstream chaos simply stops arriving. Right. That is the diagnosis complete. So now let's talk about the fix. And I want to show you what you're actually building, because it is not a new ERP and it is not a full WMS. It is something in between. So this is the opportunity. And this is the shape of the answer, a trusted execution layer. And we have 5 components here. We have people with guided mobile tasks. Your team stops interpreting a printed list and starts following a task on a device that already knows what the right answer looks like. Identity, so barcode and RFID. Every item, every location, every pallet has a machine readable name, not a name a human remembers, a name a device can verify. Then, of course, the process, rules, and validation. The correct action becomes the easy action, and the incorrect one gets stopped politely at the moment it is attempted. Then we have the systems, so ERP integration, because this layer is not a competing source of truth. It feeds the truth into the system you already have. And lastly, control, very important, exceptions and analytics. Every non-standard situation gets routed to an owner, and you can finally see patterns instead of individual fires. Now, notice what is not on this slide. There's no replace your ERP. There's no robotics fleet, no new building. This is a layer, and it sits on top of what you already own. And there's a very simple principle underneath that idea. One sentence that I think should govern every warehouse technology decision you make. Keep the core. Modernize the edge. This is the principle. Keep stable the ERP core, master data, orders and documents, accounting rules, enterprise controls. These should be slow to change. You want your financial and governance layer to be boring, auditable, and stable. Frequent change here is a risk, not a feature. Then modernize quickly. So the execution edge, mobile workflows, barcode validation, real-time transactions, operational analytics. This layer needs to move at the speed of your operation. New product line, new customer requirement, seasonal peak, the edge should adapt in days. And here's why this matters commercially. When you try to solve edge problems inside the core, every small operational change becomes an ERP project. Change requests, regression testing, a queue, 6 weeks to add a field. Separate the two, and you get the best of both worlds. A stable ledger and an operational layer you can actually iterate on. Different problems, different clock speeds. Let's make that concrete now, because keep the core, modernize the edge is a principle, and you cannot buy a principle. So here's what it looks like as an actual architecture. So I have 4 layers here, and I want to be clear that every one of these is a distinct decision. So number 1, identification and devices. So here we're talking about barcodes, RFID, scanners, mobile terminals, handhelds, tablets, the physical hardware that captures reality. Then we have mobile execution software, which provides you with guided tasks, validation, user workflows. This is the brain of the layer. It decides what the worker sees next and what they are allowed and not allowed to do. Integration and orchestration. Transactions, queues, monitoring, exceptions. Unglamorous, absolutely decisive. This is where most projects quietly fail. And lastly, ERP and business systems. Orders, balances, master data, financial records, unchanged. Still the system of record. Here's the mistakes I see most often. Excuse me. A company buys the first layer, a set of very nice scanners, and expects the other 3 to somehow follow. 6 months later, they have expensive devices running a spreadsheet in a different shape. Hardware captures, software decides, integration commits, the ERP records. All 4, or you're back to the same chaos with a better bill. It's just what it is. Now, all 4 of these layers exist to serve one single event, repeated thousands of times a day. So let's zoom right in and look at the event in slow motion. This is the atom of the whole thing. Get this right and everything above it works. 4 steps. Scan, identify the item, the location, and the task. Not roughly the right shelf, the specific item in a specific place for a specific reason. Then validate. Confirm the correct item, quantity, and destination. And this is the step that changes everything, because validation happens before the action, not after it. The system actually checks your work while you can still costlessly change it. Then you execute, guide the employee through the required action, one instruction at a time. There's no interpretation required, no tribal knowledge either. Lastly, you confirm. Post the result to the ERP immediately, not in an hour, not later, not at the end of the shift. Now, if we go back to slide 9 for a second, if If you remember that, 6 steps of chaos, all triggered by one unrecorded move. This is the intervention at step 1. It takes a few seconds. It happens where the work happens, and it replaces find the error later with prevent the error now. Multiply that by every transaction in your building, and that is the whole game. And when you put that single trusted transaction in place across your processes, the whole operating model of your inventory changes. So let me show you the before and after side by side. 5 shifts, before and after. Paper and spreadsheets become guided mobile workflows. Transactions posted later become transactions posted immediately. Errors found during counting becomes errors prevented during work. And that is the line I would underline if I could only pick one. Supervisors managing every exception because exceptions routed automatically, which is how you give your supervisors their week back. And the last one is the strategic price. ERP accuracy that depends on cleanup becomes ERP accuracy that is sustainable. Think about what that actually means. Today, many of you have accurate inventory data immediately after a count, and then a slow decay until the next one. Execution-driven inventory replaces that with a flat line because accuracy is produced by the process itself continuously rather than restored by an event. That is the destination then. Now, let's talk about the route, because nobody gets there in one jump, and the sequence matters enormously. 5 stages, and the order is not decorative, it is casual. So the baseline, map your processes and establish KPIs. I've talked about this before you touch anything, because if you do not know your current picking rate and your current accuracy, you will never be able to prove that you actually gain something. Identify, barcode your items, your locations, and your assets. Locations especially. Almost everybody barcodes products and then forgets that a location without a name cannot be verified. Then mobilize. Guide employees through digital workflows. This is where your people feel the change, and done well, this is the stage where they start liking it because the devices removes ambiguity from their day. Then you integrate, connect transactions and exceptions to the ERP. Note that word, exceptions. Plenty of projects integrate the happy path and leave the exceptions in a WhatsApp group. And lastly, advance. Introduce RFID, advanced analytics, optimization. This is stage 5, not stage 1. RFID on top of an undisciplined process just gives you raw data faster. Let's stay on stage 1 for a moment, because baseline is the stage that gets skipped most often and punished hardest. And there is a specific way to do it well. 5 things to do here before anybody configures anything. Map the real process, not only the official procedure. There's a documented process, and there's what happens at 4 o'clock on a Thursday when 2 trucks arrive at once. Automate the second one, or your solution gets abandoned in week 3. Observe how employee handles exceptions. Your team has already invented brilliant workarounds. Learn them. Some deserve to be designed in. Some are the problem in disguise. Then clean the data required for the first workflows. Only the data you need for the first workflows. Do not attempt a full master data project. This is how these initiatives die of exhaustion before delivering anything. Identify the 5 most common error types, not 50, just 5. Focus on them. Those 5 are usually most of your pain, and they tell you exactly which validations to build first. Lastly, establish a KPI baseline before implementation, as I mentioned on the previous slide. And again, please do this one. I've seen this genuinely excellent projects fail to get funding for phase 2 purely because nobody measured phase 1's starting point. With that groundwork done, we can build the foundation of the execution layer. And it starts with giving everything in your warehouse a name a machine can actually read. 4 identities, and each one answers a question you currently cannot answer reliably. The item, what is moving? Location, from where to where? Task, why is it moving? And lastly, the user, who confirmed this transaction. Now, most operations have the first one. They barcode products because products arrive with barcodes on them. Fine. Very few have all 4. And it is the combination that creates real inventory truth because we have 200 units is an accounting statement. We have 200 units in aisle 4, bay 2, moved there under task 1147 by Maria at 9:42 a.m. That is an operational fact. You can act on the second one. And notice the byproduct. You have just built a complete audit trail without anybody filling in a form. Traceability stops being an extra activity and becomes a side effect of doing the work properly. Identity tells you what is being touched, but something has to tell your team what to do with it. And that is where mobile workflows come in. 4 functions the workflow has to deliver. So, number 1 is context. Show the correct prioritized task. The worker should never have to decide what matters most. That is a system decision made with information the worker does not have. Guidance. Present one clear action at a time. 1, not a screen of options. Cognitive load is a real operational cost, especially at hour 7 of a shift. Then, validation. Prevent predictable mistakes. Wrong bin, wrong quantity, wrong item. These are all predictable, which means they're all preventable. And lastly, exception handling. Route non-standard situations correctly. Damaged goods, short receipts, missing labels, these are normal. They need a defined path, not an improvisation. Here's the underlying idea. Every company has standards. They are usually in a document, in a folder that somebody read during onboarding. A standard in a document is a hope. A standard inside a workflow is simply what happens. Now, that trusted transaction is only trustworthy if it actually reaches your ERP every time, including on the days when the network has other ideas. For example, among many other things. A couple of requirements here, and I would treat every one of these as a hard question for any vendor you evaluate, including us. Process transactions in real time when possible. Speed is the default. Queue transactions when systems are unavailable because your warehouse does not stop when the ERP goes down for maintenance. And the far corner of a metal building is a hostile place for Wi-Fi. Work continues, the transactions waits its turn. Recover automatically after connection failures. Failures. Automatically, not the supervisor re-enters the last hour by hand. Monitor every transaction state. You should be able to see at any moment what completed, what is queued, and what has failed. And assign every exception to an owner. A failed transaction without an owner is not an exception. It is a future stock discrepancy with a delayed fuse. Ask any vendor to demonstrate all 5, ideally by unplugging something in front of you. That is a good one. Just make sure you still stay on the call somehow. One question always comes up at this point in the conversation, usually in chat, usually within about 90 seconds. So let's deal with barcode versus RFID heads on. That one is usually pretty good. So the answer is not RFID is the future. The answer is they do different jobs. And we've talked about this multiple times, and this is a very important topic. Barcode, let's identify that. It is best suited to directed confirmed scans. Its main strength is low cost plus explicit confirmation. And I want to dwell on that word explicit because a barcode scan means a human being deliberately pointed a device at a specific thing. That is an intentional act, and intentional act makes excellent data. Main limitation, it requires line of sight. Typical uses, receiving, picking, internal moves, counting. RFID is best suited for high volume, hands-free identification. Main strength, speed and bulk visibility. Read a whole pallet or a whole doorway without touching anything. Main limitation, and this is one quite important, it requires environmental testing. Metal reflects, liquid absorbs, and your building has opinions. Typical uses, pallets, assets, portals, rapid counts. My practical recommendation, build barcode discipline first, then add RFID where volume and physics justify it. RFID is an accelerator, not a substitute for process. If the process is wrong, RFID makes it wrong at speed. So we have the components and the technology choices. The natural next question is a personal one. Where does your operation sit today? Let me give you a ladder to place yourself on. Did I switch the slide? Okay, good. So 5 levels. And you can place yourself honestly as I go through them. And put your number in the chat if you would like. Generally love to see that spread at the end. Level 1, reactive. I'm just going to not read the levels. So reactive, recounts, spreadsheets, tribal knowledge. Accuracy comes from effort, and it decays the moment the effort stops. Standardized, labels, define locations, basic scanning, a big step, and this is where most companies I meet actually are. Connected, mobile workflows plus real-time ERP posting. Now the record and the reality move together. This is where the sawtooth flattens. Level 4, it's an important one. Controlled, exception management, analytics, role-based workflows. You're not just accurate, you're in full control. You know which processes drift, which shifts struggle, which suppliers cause receiving problems. This is where the majority of our customers operate, and honestly, it is where the return on investment is most convincing. And level 5 is optimized. RFID, dynamic priorities, predictive actions. The system tells you what to do next before you even ask. 2 things worth saying. First, you cannot skip levels. Level 5, built on level 1, habits collapses. Second, and please hear this, level 3 to 4 is where most of the value is. Level 5 is exciting. 4 is where the money is. So you know where you are and where you're heading. The only question left in this section is the one that decides whether the project succeeds. How do you actually get there without betting the operation on it? I split this up into 4 waves. This is the pattern behind every successful rollout that I have personally been part of. You gotta align, confirm scope, establish KPIs, assign owners. That's wave 0 because it happens before the project officially starts, and skipping it is the most expensive shortcut available to you at the start of a project. Then pilot, one location, preferably one process, and critically, real employees and real transaction volume. Not a demo in a meeting room with 3 test barcodes. A genuine process on a genuine day with the people who will actually use it. This is where you learn what your procedure document left out. Then we have wave 2, which is scale, additional workflows, more devices and integrations, and the important part, a repeatable rollout model. Wave 1 teaches you how to do wave 2 10 times faster. And the last one, wave 3, optimize. Analytics, RFID, dynamic task prioritization. The level 5 material once the foundation is solid. And here's why I love this shape. Your risk is concentrated in wave 1, where it is small, cheap, and reversible. By the time you're spending real money in wave 2, the uncertainty is already gone. Nothing about this requires you to stop operating, and nothing requires you to touch your ERP core. This is the plan that works. Now, let me be equally honest about the plans that do not, because I've seen every one of these and a couple of them more than once. How many do we have here? 7 mistakes. Made some of these myself, so this comes with a genuine affection. Automating an inefficient workaround, the classic. Somebody invented a clever fix 5 years ago for a problem that no longer exists, and now you're digitizing it forever. And then starting with every warehouse process. Ambition is lovely, scope is fatal. Treating integration as an IT only responsibility. Integration decisions are business decisions. When should stock be reserved? Who approves a variance? IT cannot answer those questions alone and should not be asked to. The whole team needs to be involved. Then ignoring employee ergonomics. If the device is heavy, the screen is unreadable in sunlight, or the battery dies at hour 6, your beautiful solution loses to a paper list every single time. Failing to assign exception ownership. Unowned exceptions become tomorrow's discrepancies. They always do. Scaling before the pilot is stable. Enthusiasm after a good week 1 is pretty dangerous. Let the pilot get boring first. Boring is the signal. And lastly, measuring only inventory accuracy. It is a necessary metric and a wildly incomplete one. Which brings us neatly to what else you should measure. That is the list of what goes wrong. So let me flip it over, because the teams that get this right share a very consistent set of habits. And I got 6 of them here. These are remarkably consistent across every successful program I've seen. And we already touched base on a couple of them, but let's sum them up into a proper list. So design from the individual scan event. Bottom up, not top down. Get the atom right and the molecule takes care of itself. Make the standard process fast and simple. This one is subtle and it matters enormously. If the correct path is slower than the workaround, people will use the workaround and they will be right too. Define ownership for every exception, every single one. Name a role, not a person. Test with real users and real transaction volumes. Peak volume, not average. Your process only has to survive Thursday. No. Build monitoring into the solution from day 1, not as a phase 2 dashboard project. You cannot manage what you cannot see, and you'll want to see it in week 1. And lastly, scale through repeatable templates. Site 2 should be dramatically easier than Site 1. If it is not, you built a project instead of capability. And once the program is running well, you will need to prove it to a CFO who quite reasonably wants to know what changed. So here is the framework that I personally would use. 4 dimensions. Report all 4, and your business case becomes very difficult to argue with. Inventory accuracy, accuracy, which involves inventory accuracy, adjustment frequency, and location accuracy. That middle one is my favorite leading indicator. If adjustment frequency is failing, your process is genuinely improving, not just your last count. Productivity. Lines processed per hour, search time, touches per transaction. Search time is the hidden cost from slide 8 finally becoming measurable. and therefore finally reducible. Then we have service. On-time shipment, short pick frequency, order cycle time. This is a dimension your customers feel and the one your sales team will thank you for. And lastly, control. Transaction latency, exception aging, workflow adoption, and adoption is the one I would watch most closely in the first 90 days because a workflow nobody uses is a very expensive suggestion. For context on the kind of movement to expect, across our customer base, we typically see productivity improvements in the region of 30+% and inventory accuracy in the high 90s. I want to be precise about what that is. Those are typical results from our customers, not a guarantee. Your numbers depend on your starting point, your discipline, and your product mix, which is exactly why we insisted on that baseline back at slide 18, a couple of slides back. Let me now lift up from the metrics for a moment because there's a bigger picture here about where warehouses are generally heading. And it is not where the headlines suggest. This is a great slide because it pushes back gently on a lot of industry noise. Employees act on prioritized tasks. Devices capture trusted inventory events. Software manages workflows and exceptions. ERP records remain synchronized. Analytics improve the next decision, and every participant sees the same inventory truth. Notice there are no robots in that list, not because robotics is not real, it is, and it is impressive, but because full automation is available to a smaller number of very large operations. And connection is available to essentially everybody this week. The last line is the destination. One inventory truth shared by the picker, the supervisor, the planner, the finance team, and the customer service agent. Same number, same moment, no reconciliation meeting required. So, if the connection is the goal, a very fair question is what you should actually look for in the software that delivers it, regardless of whose logo is on it. The right platform combines execution, validation, integration, and scalability. Here's the checklist, and I would encourage you to use it on any vendor, us included. Mobile workflows for real operations. Built for gloves, noise, and hurry, not for a boardroom demo. Embedded business logic. Your rules live in the workflow, not in a training document. Online and offline support. Non-negotiable, as we said. Then fast integration with enterprise systems. Weeks, not quarters. Flexibility across multiple use cases because the warehouse is first, but then comes production, then retail, then assets. And control, visibility, and growth potential. Room to move up the maturity curve without changing platform. That last point deserves a moment. The most expensive mistake in the space is not choosing the wrong platform. It is choosing one you outgrow in 18 months and paying for the whole journey twice. So enough abstraction. Let me show you what all of this actually feels like on the floor and in the office once it is running properly. The final system. So here we have two people, one shared truth. I've used the slide multiple times, but it portrays the proper system very well. On the left, the warehouse. As you can see, the operator has no paperwork, no clipboard, no lists to transcribe later. On-site verification, so the check happens at the shelf where it is free, not at a desk where it is expensive. And a convenient mobile workplace, everything the operator needs in one hand, doesn't need to walk to the desk. On the right, we have the office. So remote supervision, the manager can see the operation without walking it, so it works both ways. Real-time data exchange, as the scan happens, not tonight. and accurate ERP document status. When he opens the order, it reflects reality. Both of them are smiling in this picture, of course. Why wouldn't they? And I promise this is not just stock photography. When operators are actually um, stop being blamed for discrepancies they did not cause, and managers stop chasing information, the whole mood in a building generally changes. That part does not show up in the ROI model, but everybody who has been through it actually notices it. And that better day has a number attached to it. So let's talk about what this approach does to your operating cost. And we've used this one multiple times as well, because again, has a very good visual representation of what it looks like in numbers. So let me be very clear about what this table is and what is not. This is not a software price list, and it is not a discount comparison. Every row here is the total monthly operational cost of running inventory control a particular way. The labor, the errors, the rework, the emergency purchases, the surge time. Everything we put under the waterline on slide, I think it was 8 or 7 in the beginning. So manual checking, we have around $10,000 a month. Do the math, what it is a year. Excel or Google Sheets, $8,000 a month. Better. Notice how modest the improvement is, because the spreadsheet is still manual data entry with extra formatting. Then we have a USB barcode scanner at a fixed workstation. That already brings everything down to 4,000. Real progress. You have added identity, but the person still has to walk the goods to the desk, which of course spends labor time among many other things. Then we have a basic barcode app. Already brings us down to 2,500. Mobile at last. And then we have full Cleverence implementation, which brings everything down to around 1,000 a month, which means companies reduce their monthly operating costs by around 90%. So again, simple math, roughly $9,000 a month, or a staggering $108,000 a year. And I would add one thing that is not on the slide. The biggest jumps come from removing manual data entry and moving execution to where the goods actually are. Those two moves do most of the work, to be completely honest with you. So let me spend just a couple of minutes now on who we are and what we actually built. And then I want to show you a customer who did all of this for real. And got to switch the slide here. There we go. So quick tour. 5 product lines, 1 platform underneath. We have Cleverence inventory, the core warehouse product, goods arrival, pick and ship, stock taken, moves between locations and warehouses, residual stock and sales, write-offs, among other operations. You can see the actual device menu there on the right. I believe it's on, yeah, it's there. Nice. And I would point out how deliberately plain it is. This is a design choice. An operator wearing gloves needs a short list of unambiguous options, not a beautiful dashboard. Then we have store ops for retail operations, delivery ops for last mile and driver workflows, factory ops for production and shop floor material movement, and assets for equipment and asset tracking. Why does that breadth matter? Because of the growth point on slide that we had a couple of slides back. You start in the warehouse, then production wants the same discipline, then someone asks about the service vans, same platform, same integration approach, no new vendor. Everything is running under the same hood. And underneath all of these 5 awesome products sit the same 4 capabilities, which is really the short version of everything we have discussed today. And I think, there's 4 capabilities, and I'm pretty sure you should recognize now every one of them, because again, we've discussed them, and they map directly onto the execution layer we built together earlier. Mobile and connected devices. So once again, smartphones, tablets, rugged handhelds. So the data entry happens on the go at the point of work. And I will note, you do not need to buy rugged terminals for every user. Plenty of our customers start with simple Android phones they already own. That is often how a pilot gets approved. Very important to mention. Barcode and RFID technology, quick, reliable identification for inventory checks and asset tracking. That is the identity layer. Real-time data integration with existing ERP or accounting systems, so information stays consistent and current. That is the integration layer, and note the words existing ERP. Today's whole title in 3 words. And lastly, customizable workflows. The platform adapts to your process rather than asking your process to adapt to the software. That's it. Covering everything that we talked about, all under one platform. Now, if any of this sounds like something you would want to explore, you deserve to know exactly what happens next. So here is our process with no mystery behind it. Split it up to 5 steps. Pretty complete transparency about each one. We have a pre-sale brief, so it's a quick call. You pick a convenient date and share your project details, what your request is, what your goals are. This is a conversation, not a sales call. Honestly, a lot of the value is in the diagnosis itself, just like we talked about, because you want to make sure that you have a system that actually fits to what you're looking for. Then we join the chat. You get direct communications with dedicated project manager to align expectations and strategy, a named human, not a ticket queue. Then we do a demo, hands-on experience with the product, available if your chosen start date is within the next 2 weeks, which is not the best. We usually try to we advise not to rush these kind of projects, but we could do a product demo either way without any issues. You can actually check out the product demo right on our website, cleverence.com. You can set up an account, connect an Android device that you already have, see how the data exchange happens. It's all there. Now getting back to the 5 steps that we have here. After the demo, we do a commercial offer. So it's going to be a personalized proposal based on your actual project scope and timeline, not a list price for a package you did not actually ask for. And lastly, project implementation. We started with wave 1. One location, one process, real volume, exactly as we discussed. And you can stop at any step. Generally, some of the most useful conversation I've had ended after the brief, because the honest answer, once again, was you have a process problem this quarter, not a software problem. I'd much rather tell you that than sell you something you're not ready for. And to make all of this concrete, I want to finish with a quick customer story just down the road from where we are in Dubai, because they faced exactly the situation in our title today. And let's take a look at that. This is APMG, a spare parts e-commerce business in Dubai. Great guys. We've talked about them multiple times, but it's a great story. So custom ERP, around 100,000 SKUs, 17 people in the warehouse. Now there are more. And I want to be careful and honest about this starting point because it really matters. Their ERP was not broken. It was a functioning custom system doing its job as a system of a record. What it did not have was location level visibility. It knew what they owned, not where any of it was. So if we picture the warehouse split in 2, front half held bulky and sometimes fragile items, windshields, that kind of thing. The back half was rows of plastic bins for address storage, 100,000 SKUs, mostly small parts, many of which look almost identical to each other. The problem: inefficient order processing, frequent picking errors, and time-consuming product searches, right? Slowing operations and dragging down overall productivity. Exactly the pattern from slide that we had in the beginning. So the solution, we introduced Cleverence, in this case with Zebra mobile handheld computers, and and our software, of course, to make operations mobile. Delivery plan document, order supplier document, placement into the cell, and collected orders for shipment. Note what is absent. We did not touch their ERP whatsoever. We added the execution layer above it. So just like everything that we talked about today. And the result, with the shift to mobile operations, they sharply reduced manual data entry and physical trips to verify information, with a marked increase in processing accuracy and speed. At that point, there were 17 mobile devices in use. I believe there are quite a bit more now. But at that point, they had a 4 times increase in inventory turnover ratio. So more than 10,000 additional square meters of storage area and 99% reduction in staff errors. Address storage increased order fulfillment roughly tenfold. And the headline for me is the first sentence. Again, their ERP stayed exactly where it was. It was not touched. So that is the story, and that is the method, which brings me to the thing that I promised you at the very beginning: the free guide, which would be 5 stages of increasing ROI in the warehouse automation. Again, it follows the same logic we talked through today, with a bit more detail on how the return builds stage by stage, which is exactly the material you need if you are the person who has to make this case internally. It will land with you after the webinar, so no need to write anything down. But if anything, we'll have recording of the webinar as well on all the platforms, so you can always rewatch if you want, if you found some specific part useful for you specifically. You can always take a look at that. And here's the last slide. Here's how you can reach me directly, and I do mean directly. This is my phone, not a general inbox. There's a phone number, there's the WhatsApp, the email, and also a QR code on the screen for Telegram. The handle is @Stan_Cleverence. So you can pick and choose whatever platform you're most comfortable with. But that is how to reach me directly. If you take one thing away from today, let it be this. Before you scope an ERP replacement, go and find out where inventory truth actually breaks in your operation. I've talked about this many times, but again, it's the most important thing. Take those 5 tests from earlier, walk your receiving and put away, and see what you find. In most cases, the fix is a layer, not a full platform. It is a matter of weeks, not years. You just need that execution layer, as I mentioned. And if you want a second pair of eyes on that diagnosis, again, message me. I'm happy to do it, whether or not it ever becomes a project. At the very least, I can help out and consult in the right way, and be glad that I've pointed someone in the right direction. Right. So let me check out the questions. I'm going to close off. And that's about it for today. Hopefully, found all these topics so far helpful today. Oh wow, it's dragged on for a bit longer than usual, but hopefully for the ones who were here, enjoyed it. That's about it. Thank you very much for your time, and again, I'll be in the chat for a little bit, and yeah, looking forward to hear from you. Again, the handle is going to be here for another couple of minutes, so you can take a look at that. And as always, you can just go to cleverence.com. All the information is there, and all the contacts there as well. Okay, once again, thank you so much for today, for joining me today, and see you in the next one. By the way, the next webinar is going to be at a different time, and it's going to be with our partner who provides hardware in the MENA region. So it's going to be an interesting one. I'm going to have a couple more of those type of webinars as well, just to kind of change it up a little bit. But yeah, that's about it. Once again, thank you all, and have a great time of the day wherever you are located globally. All right, cheers. Bye-bye.